Hello friends. In my last video I said that I was going to do a paycheck budget for the paycheck that I got when I filmed that, and I did film it. But it ended up being ever so slightly out of focus the whole time, and I decided that I didn't want to put that up on the internet because it drove me crazy looking at it, and I figured it wouldn't be any better for you guys. So I didn't put that up, but I did close that budget out last week. I got paid yesterday. I'm filming this on the 6th. So closed this out on Thursday night, and we're just going to run through it real quick before we get into doing my paycheck budget for the paycheck I got yesterday, and also checking in on my credit score and updating some of the debt trackers. I'm going to warn you guys now that my budgets aren't usually very exciting. They're extremely consistent month over month, with the exception of a few things, so these are probably going to get pretty boring pretty quickly, but we're still going to do it anyway just to check in and try to keep on track. First, we start with my paycheck, which comes in at $2,717.09 bi-weekly. That is after taxes, insurance, retirement, all of my usual deductions. I will not be sharing what my actual annual salary is, but that is my take home. That is always exactly the same except for 2 months out of the year that are 3 paycheck months, because my insurance and whatnot are not deducted from the third paycheck. They are split across 2 paychecks per month. So once we have one of those show up, that one will change the actual amount. But the budgeted amount's always the same, and 9 times out of 10 it will be the same for the actual. Then we get into fixed expenses, and I put all my subscriptions and stuff in here, even though I'm sure some people would probably put those in variable because they're not necessary, but they're the same every month, so I just keep them in here. First, we have my rent, which is technically due on the 1st of the month, but since I live with my parents, my mom just transfers that out when I tell her that she can. It was during the previous pay period, though, so it still flows in here. I budget $619 because that's what she usually transfers. This time she transferred $621. I'm not really sure why, but for $2, I'm not going to worry about it. Next, we have my storage unit, which always transfers out on the 1st. I have it budgeted for $195, just rounding up. It's always $191.53, at least since the last time they raised my rental fee. I can't get rid of that. It is full of, well, a lot of books, but also I basically have the contents of an entire house in there. The only things I'm missing are a dining room table, a bed frame, and a sofa. So we're not getting rid of that, and I'm not moving all of that stuff into my parents' house. That will all be coming with me whenever I manage to move out of here. And these are not in date order, they're just in the order that I wrote them down in here. My YouTube Premium comes out on the 23rd, budgeted $15, just rounding up, which I did for pretty much everything in here. It's actually $14.97. I watch so much YouTube. I watch more YouTube than I watch television. It is absolutely worth it to me, and if I was getting rid of all my subscriptions, that is, well, one of the 2 that I would keep. The other's Apple Music, but I pay for that annually, so you won't see that until next year. Some of my Patreon memberships also come out on the 1st, budgeted $8, the actual $7.35. That's the same as usual. Hulu comes out on the 1st, budgeted $22, $21.19 for actuals. I keep that because my parents pay for Netflix and I pay for our Hulu, so not unilaterally canceling it. Also, Criminal Minds is on there, as is Bones, although I think Bones is actually leaving shortly, and those are my 2 comfort shows, so I like to keep access to them. I have YouTube membership come out on the 3rd, budgeted $11, actuals $10.69. That is for the financial diet. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Love the workshops, love the Discord. The whole group's great. Also on the 1st, we have my Google Workspace membership, which is for my side hustle business email that never gets used. I really need to put more time into actually pushing that and trying to make some money off of it. I have my own website for it, so that email is just tied to the custom domain rather than a Gmail account. Budgeted $18, comes out at $17.98, and that pretty much never changes. I have 2 accounts on there, one's for me and one's the commission email. And then last but not least for this budget for fixed costs, we have my iCloud subscription, which comes out on the 4th, budgeted $10, actual is $9.99. I have 2 terabytes of storage because I have so many photos and videos and music and everything that it's just easier to have it back up. Budgeted was $898, actuals was $894.70, which brings us down to an actual remainder of $1,822.39 for my previous paycheck. Next, we have variable expenses. First on the list is therapy, which is a $50 copay per session. This is because I screwed up, sort of, my FSA calculations last year. Normally I pay out of there, but when I determined the amount that I wanted to have withheld from my paychecks, it was with the assumption that I'd be going to therapy every other week. However, I had a lot of stuff happen over Christmas last year that really threw me for a loop, so I have been in therapy weekly since January, and therefore went through my FSA by July. So I've been paying out of pocket for my sessions since then. I'm actually dropping back down to every other week now, so that's going to drop to $50 every 2 weeks, and then next year it should all come from my FSA again, so this is not a permanent thing. Next we have gas. I always budget at $75. It usually costs me somewhere between $30 to $32 to fill my tank, depending on how much risk I take and how willing I am to run on fumes. I pretty much never actually hit that unless I'm road tripping, because I usually only fill up once a week. So budget is $75. Actuals for that was $67.52. My refills for my shampoo and conditioner both hit last week. It seems like a lot of money, but they are liter refills. I usually only refill my shampoo once a year and conditioners every 3 to 4 months. So it ends up evening out to something much more reasonable. I slightly under budgeted. It ended up being $91.76. That is with reward points knocking $40 off of both of them, but I almost never pay full price, so I digress. Ended up being $1.76 over budget for that. And then I added this in here after it happened, but I had $0 budgeted for food because I don't normally buy food separately. It's included in my rent that I pay to my parents, my portion of the grocery budget. But I did buy myself a large chai latte and a cinnamon roll last weekend because I went to Run Club and my shins decided to tell me to go F myself. So I had to hobble my way back to the coffee shop where we were meeting and allowed myself a comfort purchase. So that was $12.94 that I didn't budget for. So all in all, I ended up coming in with actuals of $272.22, which is $7.22 over my budget. Brought me down to an actual leftover of $1,550.17. Then we come to my savings. Basically all of these are sinking funds except for the emergency fund at the moment. And the one that explains why I can't pay off my debt as quickly as you would think with the salary that I make. I own a horse. He gets $680 bi-weekly for routine vet care, board, farrier, my lessons, because I am required to be in some sort of program to be at my barn, which I don't regret. My trainer's the best. I've known her for 2 decades, but that all comes out of there. He has his own bank account. It deposits separately. He has his own debit card. So it all goes there. And that doesn't change. My car maintenance, which will change in the next paycheck, it's $175 budgeted and actual for this one because my car insurance usually also goes into a sinking fund. I pay that twice a year, and I budget $100 per paycheck for that, but I end up filling the amount that I need before I actually hit the 6-month mark, so anything left over I actually put into my car maintenance fund right now. So normally it's $100 to insurance and $75 to maintenance, but since my insurance sinking fund was filled, I put that $100 towards car maintenance. My cats get $50 a paycheck. I have 3. That covers food, flea and tick stuff, litter, vet bills, whole 9. And then $75 to my emergency fund. This will be dropping down with the paycheck that I just got because I hit the $2,000 mark, which is still not enough. I'm trying to balance continuing to contribute to that with paying off debt and not going over budget generally. All in, my budgeted savings was $980, my actual was $980, and that leaves me with leftovers of $570.17, actually. And then the last thing to come out of here is my payment for my Chase card, which I paid in my previous video, which was $550. That was what I budgeted, that was my actual payment, and my leftover after paying that was $20.17, which is tight. Don't get me wrong, it's very tight, but I did have around $200 left in my checking account from my prior paycheck, so I was not actually close to hitting zero. It's just, that's what happened with this particular paycheck. Because of that, I will not be making an extra payment to my Chase card this time, but hopefully starting in October I will be able to. September's a bit of a tight month, but October things start to loosen up. That's a 3 paycheck month for me, so makes things easier. All right, on to budgeting my most recent paycheck. My calendar's all made up already. I went through an exercise a couple months ago of budgeting out through the end of the year, basically, so calendars are made up. I did get my therapy weeks wrong with my bi-weekly sessions, but it doesn't really matter because it still ends up being 1 session per paycheck, so that is made up already, so we can get into actually setting up my budget. So paycheck date is 9/5/2025. That was yesterday. My inflow was my paycheck. Budget amount is $27.17. Oh, I'm rounding down, taking all the cents off for the budget. If I could write correctly, that would be helpful. Actual is $27.1709. I don't have much in terms of fixed expenses for this paycheck. Everything just ended up timing pretty simply on this. So first we've got my, oh, I missed writing that in here. Okay. We've got my Experian subscription, which I do pay for credit lock and being able to see my score across multiple credit bureaus. That comes out on the 11th, and that is roughly $27. Then we've got my one Patreon membership, which comes out on the 9th. That is for Jenna Phipps, who is rebuilding a whole house with her boyfriend. Props to them. Every time I watch it, it makes me want to do a renovation project, which I know is probably not the lesson I should be taking from that. And then we've got my New York Times subscription, which comes out every 4 weeks. This month it's on the 8th, and it's currently $1 and something per week. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that subscription once the promo rate runs out because I don't read it anywhere near as much as I used to. But that's all of those, which brings us down to a total of $40. As far as my variable expenses go, it's just going to be therapy and my gas. Should be $50 for, oh wait, no, that's why I did it that way. $100 because my session this past week didn't hit charge-wise until yesterday. And then gas, budgeting $75 as usual, which brings us to a total of $175. And then savings, same as they always are. Well, actually, that's not true. Emergency fund dropped slightly. Car insurance and car maintenance. $680, $50. I dropped my emergency fund to $50 per paycheck, so $100 a month. It's in a high yield savings account at a different bank than where I keep most of my money, so not touching that unless I actually need it. And then back to $100 for car insurance because my payment date was yesterday, actually, for my 6 months. It hasn't cleared my bank yet, but it should by Monday. They auto draft it. And then $75 to car maintenance. And all of this already happened, so we're going to put this in here. Most of these are straight deposits, and then the ones that aren't are auto transfers. So every time I get paid, it just happens, and I don't have to think about it. And that was that. And that is that. This brings us to an actual total of $955. Then we get down to the fun part. All of the debt payments, which are basically all coming out of this paycheck except for my Chase. That is 4 credit cards in my Affirm plan. I actually made all of these payments yesterday because they're budgeted to be the same thing all the time. And every day that I don't pay interest on a $500 balance is good. I wrote out all of my budgeted debt payments. Well, it was not in view of the camera, so here we go. Budgeted $1,354, and actuals ended up being all the same except for Affirm. That's $51.96. So if I calculate out all of this, we've got $193 budgeted as leftovers. It would have been a little lower because I was supposed to be horse showing this weekend, but my horse decided to break himself, so that is not happening, and I will not be horse showing for the foreseeable future. Both because I had a come to Jesus moment with myself about all of this, and also because he's got some medical things going on, and we don't know what they are, and if I'm honest, it is really stressing me out because this could turn into a rabbit hole of expensive diagnostics and treatment, which I did not plan for, and I really don't want to have to clear out my emergency fund for this, but we'll see. So that's also why I'm not making any extra payments this video until I get his blood work back and we see if there's something going on with any of his levels. He did test positive for Lyme, so it might just be that, but I won't know until we get the other stuff back and start his Lyme treatment. But I'm trying to stay positive and remind myself that I do have money set aside. I will have an extra paycheck in a month. Theoretically, I should be getting a raise soon based on what my boss has said, but I don't know what that raise will be, so that will help too. But that is my paycheck budget for this paycheck, and now we get to do the kind of fun part, maybe. One piece of which is checking in on my credit score. My credit score in August was 656, which is obviously not great, and this is my FICO score through Experian as they're reporting it. That's the one that I'm going to be polling every month, even though I can see my other ones. My Equifax one is actually higher, but it was 656 in August, which obviously not the best, particularly given that I used to have a credit score over 800, but given the amount of debt that I'm carrying, could be so much worse. My Experian score updates daily. The other two only update once a month after the credit bureau's report, so the report as of the 2nd is what is driving the numbers for this today, because my Experian score also hasn't changed. We are coloring it in just for fun. And I'm actually going to keep it orange because it is now 667, which, as far as Experian is concerned, is a fair score. I know that the tracker says to fill in with red, yellow, or green, but I'm going to save yellow for when I hit good, and green for when we are in, like, great and exceptional territory. So fair can be orange. I don't think it deserves red. It's not sub 600. It's not even sub 650. $667. Small progress, but still progress. And then we actually do get to do something that's kind of fun, which is fill in the payoff tracker, because I made a payment for a wedding that I'm going to in October, which dropped my balance a whole bunch on this card. So it actually allows me to fill in 13 stars. So I'm going to start down here just to make sure that I don't fill in too many. It's a visual representation of some progress. It's only like $250 worth of progress, but it is some progress. So happy for that. I suppose I could have waited a day to film this video because my chase statement closes tomorrow and I'm going to get to color in a grand total of 1 star on that tracker, but we will save that for the next video, and hopefully I will be able to come back then and say that it actually is just lime for my horse and I'm not going to be spending thousands of dollars trying to figure out what's wrong with him, but we will see. This is life with horses. This is why you should listen when people say don't do it, but I have to because it is in my brain and will not go away. And before someone proposes selling him, I made a commitment when I bought him as a 2-year-old that he is not going anywhere until he dies, unless something really, really bad happens to me, by which I mean I am completely out of options, and I am not completely out of options yet. So I just need to get on to trying to sell the stuff that I have in my garage and get my side hustle business actually up and running with some consistency. I don't have enough free time to really make it into a huge thing, but even a few $100s a month would help, and we will see if and when raises come out what that ends up being for me as well. So until next time, guys, which will probably be closing out today's paycheck budget and making my next one, I hope you have as good a time as you can in the wild and ridiculous world that we live in. Bye!